Hello, investors, and welcome to yet another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Longevity. I'm not sure if you know this, but the average life expectancy in a post-World War II era has doubled. That's right. And one of the major reasons for this is because our medical breakthrough technologies have improved so much, especially in the last circa 20 years. And that's why I'm so glad today to be joined by Bob Prolix of Imagion Biosystems, because Imagion, or IBX for their share code, is in the works of creating groundbreaking technology in the medical imaging space. So I'm thrilled to bring back Bob to the show. But just before we start with Bob, I just want to say one thing. Friends, we know the markets are tricky out there and they are a little bit challenging. And that's why it's more important than ever to do company-specific research. And to that effect, we want to bring you these types of interviews. So you know the drill, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so we can get more people like Bob. And Bob, with that introduction, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here again.
Great. Hey, Bob, everybody's got a story and people back people. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. So my career has been 30 plus years in the life science tools and diagnostic space, bringing new technologies into the market, figuring out how to commercialize them on a global basis. I bumped into this company about 8 or 9 years ago and got really intrigued by what I like to refer to as the simplicity and elegance of this technology. And we can talk a little bit about that as we go. But more importantly for me, from a career perspective, it's probably the most impactful thing I can do. A lot of the technologies I'd worked on were going to maybe improve laboratory medicine or maybe get better data for a patient, but not necessarily improve it. And one of their particular, their lives. One of the things we know about cancer is that cancer is more treatable the earlier we detect it. So we spend lots and lots of money, billions of dollars, to try to develop new drugs to treat cancer, many times only to add a few months to a patient's life.
Definitely.
But if we could detect cancer earlier, we actually could save a bunch of lives because we could treat the patient when the cancer is earlier. And that was what really got me excited about this company and this technology is if we can demonstrate that we've got a better way to detect cancer early, we can impact a lot of people.
Yeah, and just even adding to that, I certainly know in the US that bankruptcy from medical issues is the #1 reason. And so to the degree that we can get earlier detection, just imagine how many other people's lives we can touch in this way.
Yeah, there's a great website for what's called SEER Cancer Statistics, and it shows you graphs that if you detect cancer at stage 1, most of the time, 90% of the time for most cancers, the patient will be cured or at least be in remission of some kind. But if we wait until it's stage 3 or stage 4, they drop to like 25%. So being able to detect cancer better and earlier, we know is going to improve outcomes, reduce healthcare costs, and make everything better for everybody.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, working, I guess getting more specifically into Imagion.
Yeah.
Imaging, medical imaging, can you just explain how does your technology work? What does it do?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is, why are we working in medical imaging, right? We've got 5 ways to image the body today: CT, MRI, PET, ultrasound, and X-rays. And in X-rays, we include mammograms, for example, right? They're all really good techniques for being able to image the body, but they are restricted to looking at things like anatomical anomalies or morphology issues, right? I can see a spot, but I can't tell you if it's cancer or not. We're all familiar with a woman getting a mammogram and saying, oh my gosh, there's something there, but is that really a benign tumor or is it a malignant form of cancer? So this is the gap that occurs in imaging today, is we can identify that there might be something irregular, but I can't tell you for sure if it's cancer. And that's the gap we're trying to close. Because what we're doing is we're adding an imaging agent that will only target and bind to cancer cells. So when you see it in an MRI scan, we know it's a cancer cell that's there, not because it's an image that's irregular, but because the particles that we have given the patient actually are generating an MR contrast image that's associated with the presence of cancer cells. Cancer is a cellular disease. It's not a broken bone and an anatomical problem. It's a cellular disease. So we need to be able to address and identify the molecular signature of cancer cells.
Wow, that really is incredible. But also, one of the, I suppose, criticisms of current techniques is radiation.
Yeah.
How does your product fit in with that scope?
So that's the nice thing is we're using tiny magnetic particles that are made from iron, effectively. So they've got the magnetic property, and we don't need to use radiation. So CT uses a radiation dose. X-ray and mammograms use a radiation dose. Positron emission tomography uses a radioactive tracer that they identify, right? So by using a magnetic particle, we can use an MRI, a conventional MRI that has, no radioactivity to it. And the nice thing is that the particles, because they're made of iron, eventually end up being metabolized by your liver. And because you use iron in your blood to transport hemoglobin, the iron from our particles gets repurposed by your body and turned into ferritin used in hemoglobin. So it's a much safer way to give someone a tracer element, because we don't need to use a tracer that's radioactive. And the particle we give you actually ends up being something helpful to your body.
Wow. Okay, and I
I
guess
know it's odd, and this is why I said at the beginning, it's elegant in its simplicity. I mean, this is incredibly elegant from that perspective.
yeah, and I suppose I have two questions about when you said elegant and simplistic, if you will.
Yeah.
Number one, from a practical commercialization point of view, do labs need any new equipment?
So what we've recently announced from our clinical study was that we are now comfortable that our imaging agent will be able to be used with conventional MRI. So this means that every hospital or imaging clinic that has an MRI system would be able to administer our test. That's huge, because previously we were thinking we were going to need to develop our own proprietary detector technology. And now what we've demonstrated with our phase 1 data is, in fact, we can use the existing imaging infrastructure of MRI systems to be able to implement our test. And if you look at, for example, on a global basis, there's probably 30,000 plus MRI systems around the world. So,
Sure.
It's a well-recognized and accepted methodology for being able to do imaging. And we're just now adding an enhancement by being able to add contrast that is highly specific to cancer.
Yeah, incredible. And also, my second question was on the simplistic side, safety. Your product is a slight, not to say that other products are not safe, but appears to be slightly safer. Can you just expand on that, please?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. One is that because we're using this iron particle as the thing, as the reporter molecule that we tag the cancer with. As I said, this eventually gets reprocessed by your body and converted into something that's useful by your body. So that alone is a safety issue. The second piece is, because these particles are highly magnetic, we can use very small doses of them. And that means that we're not exposing the patient to a large load of iron in that. And we can control the way that we administer it for different types of cancer. So in the case of our breast cancer test, we're administering it by injecting it directly into the breast tissue, so it gets picked up locally by the lymph nodes, which is where we're trying to detect the presence of cancer. And from there, it can then get taken out to the liver. We don't have to do, for every cancer, we don't necessarily have to give an injection in the blood and have it circulate everywhere. So one of the nice things with this technology is we can control what's known as the route of administration to be highly tailored to that type of cancer we're looking at, and reduce the risks for the patients by reducing the dose and the exposure for them.
Right. That's certainly, again, to have that simplistic solution, like you just said, it costs less and is safer. That's an incredible combination.
Absolutely.
But talking about timing now, can you just tell us what is the stage of the business? And especially, you've had some recent news, I believe it was last month even, that was really breakthrough for the company.
Yeah. So we're what we would consider to be clinical stage company. So it means that we've done homework on the preclinical side of things, and we've actually moved into clinical investigation, where we're using human patients to study whether or not we're getting the desired ability to detect cancer. So our first product for HER2 breast cancer is in a phase 1 study in Australia. We've now approached the FDA with the idea of bringing that study to the United States to then do a second phase of testing, larger number of patients, learning a little bit more, et cetera. So over this year, we will be trying to progress from our phase 1 study in Australia to a phase 2 study in the United States that will allow us to start to get more data. We've got limited amount of data coming out of Australia. Part of that is just the size of the country, right? You got 26 million people, so there's only so many prospective patients. If we can come to the United States, we can test more patients more quickly, kind of thing. So that's part of it. And then we've got 3 other products, 2 in particular, one for prostate cancer and one for ovarian cancer, that are still in the preclinical stage, but that we're hoping to advance into the clinical phase in the coming 12 to 18 months. So we've got a pipeline of products, 1 already in the clinic and 2 that we're trying to advance towards the clinic, because our view is that the commercial strategy for our company is to try to find a strategic partner, somebody who's already in the imaging space selling, right? And so we've known all along that rather than be a one-trick pony, so to speak, for just breast cancer, if we could have a pipeline of products that says we've got a new way to do imaging, highly specific for cancer, and we've got a pipeline of products that will do that, we have a more likely chance of attracting a strategic partner to help us go commercialize that. So a lot of our effort is focused on getting the clinical evidence for the first product and getting at least 1 or more other products towards the clinic, so our partner would know that there's a pipeline of products to come.
Right. And the pipeline, is that influenced by the results of the breast cancer product?
Yes and no. Yes,
great answer.
Yes, insofar as it was really important to get the data from the breast cancer so that we could say, because look, this is the first time that any company or any academic has ever taken an iron oxide particle, put a targeting molecule on it, and put it into a human patient to see if we could do targeted imaging. We're the first people to do that. That's amazing, right? You know, when we think about that. And so getting that first one to demonstrate that targeted particles can be detectable by MRI was really important, because it would then indicate, because the particle itself is identical for prostate cancer or ovarian cancer or any of these other kinds. So once we know it's detectable, great, now we can do that. Then the answer no is, well, I still have to demonstrate that if I'm going to target prostate cancer, I've got a highly specific way to target prostate cancer or ovarian cancer, because I can't use the same targeting molecule for every type of cancer. So the good news is we've demonstrated the detectability, and in our preclinical studies for prostate cancer, we see the same kind of images. So we know MRI is going to work for all types of cancer. But no, because we still have to do all the hard work to show that I've got some way specifically for each type of cancer.
Understood. Okay. And, I guess going back to that phase 1, the trial, for the results, what kind of timing, like what period should we see the results in?
So we are leaving the current phase 1 study open to try to accumulate some more information. Our next milestone would be that we are filing what's known as an IND, an investigational new drug application, with the FDA so that we can start to do the study in the United States. I think realistically, we're looking at later this year being able to file that IND and trying to start that next phase of study later in this year or beginning of next year, right? And then depending on how many sites we have, I know lots of people like to know, well, how long is it going to take? Yes. Well, it depends, right? It depends on how many patients the FDA tells us they want to see, and it depends on how many sites and how quickly we can recruit into the study. What we do know is we've admittedly had very slow recruitment into the phase 1 study in Australia, and some of that was compounded by the COVID restrictions, et cetera. Some of it was just the way our study was designed. So we're working on the study design for phase 2 that would allow us to recruit patients faster, open it up to more sites. We've only had 4 sites in Australia. We could have 10 or 20 sites in the United States because there's just that many more patients. Right. So it's hard to predict right now how long it will take, but our goal is to be later this year filing the IND and getting ready to start that study and getting as many sites on board as we can to try to reduce the time, because obviously if we need to recruit, for example, 50 patients, right? If we had 5 sites, they could each do 10 patients, we could get that done quickly. If we only have 1 site, it might take 4 or 5 times as long to get through that number of patients. So our job this year will be to try to set that study up to get it done as expeditiously as possible.
Understood. And also, about how long do the trials take?
Yeah, so that the trial takes as long as it takes for you to recruit the number of patients you need for the statistical relevance, right? The study itself, a given patient is 1 week, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
when we enroll a patient, there's a little bit
That's
of
what I was going.
background work and some blood tests, for example. But then they come in, they get an MRI, they get a dose of our particles, they come back the next day, they get another MRI, and they're largely done. They typically will have a 7-day checkup just to make sure everything's okay.
Sure.
But the patient is on and off the study in a week, right? This is not, we don't have to follow the patient for 3 months or 6 months, because we're not trying to cure the cancer. We're simply trying to show the detection, and that's done within days.
Now I understand exactly what you're talking about. Now,
Yeah.
Bob, there is obviously some timing issues that could potentially come up, but on the corporate side, what you've recently done is to really shore up the balance sheet to make sure that you give yourself the best funding options and really a runway as possible. Can you just touch on that, please?
Yeah, so earlier this week, we announced both an entitlement offer to our shareholders, and importantly, that is for shareholders as of record today. So 7 p.m. on March 10th in Australia, Eastern Daylight Time. Anybody who's an existing shareholder on record will be part of the entitlement offer that we have there. But coincident with that, we announced a structured equity deal with Mercer Street Capital. This is a company we've been working with for a couple of years. They've been following us. And this facility gives us the ability to have effectively a safety valve, if you will, for our ability to fund the company. What we didn't want to do was try to get through this year, because once you start a study, once you commit to doing it, you really need to know that you're going to be able to fund it all the way through. You don't want to find yourself a quarter of the way through, a third of the way through, and saying, oh, we're running out of money, we got to slow things down, because there's just some things you can't slow down. Once you start, you start. So we wanted to know that we would have access to that. And given somewhat of the volatility or nervousness, if you will, in the markets for this last year, in particular, the beginning of this year, we wanted to make sure that we had, if you will, a safety valve, and somebody that we knew had long-term interests in our company and had interest in helping us get to where we wanted to go to. And Mercer's really demonstrated that. So we're very happy to partner with them. So we've got access to capital to keep this going once we pull the trigger to get going.
Yeah, terrific. You mentioned about the time zone switch, and I think that's a great spot to mention. You're currently in San Diego, and I think for a lot of our Australian viewers, they don't know quite what a medical hub San Diego is. Can you just talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, so we're an Australian listed company with some presence in Australia, and obviously we're doing our studies in Australia. But the majority of our R&D operation is based here in San Diego, and your point is well taken. So without being cheeky about it, what I like to describe to folks is there are 1,100 companies registered with Aus Biotech as biotech companies in Australia. There are 1,200 companies in San Diego that are biotech companies. There are more companies just here in San Diego and Southern California in the biotech space, and they're all in all of Australia. So if I'm looking to try to have access to talent pool and companies that I can do short-term contracts with and access to technology, et cetera, I've got everything right here in my backyard, primarily in San Diego. There are 3 huge hubs for biotech in the United States, Boston, one of them, South San Francisco, and San Diego. Those are the 3 really large hubs for biotech in the United States. And so we're here because it gives us access to human capital and resources that we would otherwise be challenged with. That's not to say there isn't good science and work done in Australia. Our prostate cancer research is being done in collaboration with people at Monash University, because they've got really good work. They've got great animal models there. We're doing work with the University of Sydney folks that have very interesting models in brain cancer. So we're trying to leverage the 2 sides of the Pacific Ocean here for what's best, right? We get the advantages of certain tax credits of R&D being done in Australia, but we get access to human capital and resources in San Diego because of the infrastructure here.
Yeah, no, exactly. And thanks for clarifying that. I just wanted to point that out to people that always say to themselves, why in San Diego?
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, what would be your definition of success for IBX over the next 12 months?
I would say the best measure of success would be that we have filed our IND and are either getting ready to or have initiated our phase 2 study in the United States to expand on and build upon what we've done so far in Australia, and that one of our products in our pipeline is now nearing getting ready to go into the clinic. if we could find ourselves a year from now with 2 products either in the clinic or one fully in the clinic and another one ready to go, I think we'd be really adding value to the company, because now we're not just, okay, early stage, a certain amount of risk involved in that. We're really now demonstrating that we've got a pipeline of products that can go. And again, I think we've taken a lot of risk out of it, because we now, we did this independent review. I think you mentioned earlier a little bit about some of the reporting we did in January, February. We've got we're really comfortable that we've got a good way to do molecular detection by MRI. And now our job really is to go fill that pipeline so that we can start to commercialize and attract a strategic partner. Like I said, not be a one-trick pony, but actually attract strategic partners because they can see we got a pipeline of a new way to do imaging, a new way to look at cancer.
Great. Hey, Bob, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we really look forward to not only the work that you're doing, but to see all these results coming through.
Let's not wait another year to have another update. All right?
Definitely not. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for watching another episode of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. And don't forget, if you want access to thousands of capital raises, sign up at 180markets.com.au and you'll get access to our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.